Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our virtual Partners for Clean Air event today. No luncheon, but hopefully sometime in the future we can gather again together. We appreciate you being with us. My name is Leah Thill. I'm the Senior Environmental Planner with MACOG. And for those of you not familiar with MACOG, we are a regional planning organization and a voluntary organization of local governments. We cover the counties of St. Joseph, Elkhart, Marshall, and Kosciuszko counties. And both our vision and our mission are explained here on this slide. What we attempt to do is study and solve problems that relate to a variety of issues that cross different jurisdiction boundaries. But in this case, we're focusing on the environment and clean air. We have a Partners for Clean Air program that focuses on empowering and educating people on what they can do to promote clean air in our region, as well as celebrating and recognizing the accomplishments and voluntary actions of individuals, organizations, businesses, and local governments, efforts they've taken to keep our air clean in the region. As part of Air Quality Action Season, we educate people on air quality action days and actions that they can take to keep our air clean and just be aware for their own health. You can also go to cleanairmichiana.com to look up more information and tips on actions and ideas that you could implement at your business or in your home. Here's our agenda for the day. First, we are going to hear a brief overview of the Greenfleet program from South Shore Clean Cities. Our keynote speaker for this afternoon will be Shawn with IDEM. We will have a guest speaker from Wani Community Schools talking about their project implementation, as well as presenting the 4 award winners for this year. All right, so now I am going to turn it over to Lauri with South Shore Clean Cities to take it away and talk a little bit more about the Greenfleet program.
Great, thank you, Leah, and thank you for having us today. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you as partners. My name is Lauri Cagle. I'm the Communications Director for South Shore Clean Cities. I'm excited to share more information with you about the Indiana Greenfleet program that we manage for our MPOs, including MACOG, and some of the many successes of the project. First, I'd like to take a moment just to speak about our organization, South Shore Clean Cities, as well as the Clean Cities program as a whole. South Shore Clean Cities was founded in 1999 and is a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving the entire state of Indiana. We're among the U.S. Department of Energy's more than 75 Clean Cities organizations, and the organizations support the nation's energy and economic security by building partnerships to advance affordable domestic transportation fuels, energy efficient mobility systems, and other fuel-saving technologies and practices. Earlier this year, South Shore Clean Cities was designated by the U.S. Department of Energy to serve the entire state of Indiana, making us the only U.S. Department of Energy designated Clean Cities coalition in the state. We're excited to take our proven methods for success statewide to help benefit all Indiana residents. A formal name change reflecting our new statewide designation is pending, so stay tuned for that. Next slide, please. In the last decade alone, South Shore Clean Cities members have reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 607,000 tons and displaced more than 93 million gallons of gasoline. So what does that look like on the road? That's the emissions reduction equivalent of removing roughly 180,000 passenger vehicles from the road for 1 year. So we're really making a difference. In 2020 alone, we assisted our stakeholders with successful acquisitions of more than $9.3 million in grant funds for more than 175 vehicles and pieces of equipment, including fueling and charging infrastructure. So we're really making a difference with you as partners. Of that 9.3 million, 5.3 million of those funds were awarded from the Indiana Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Fund for 110 vehicles and pieces of equipment. And much of that work began with the Greenfleet program. As I mentioned, South Shore Clean Cities currently manages the Indiana Greenfleet program for 2 MPOs, MACOG, who's with us today, and the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, a little bit farther over into Northwest Indiana. The goal of the program is to significantly improve the environmental performance of business and government vehicle fleets across each MPO territory. And we do that through diesel retrofits and other strategies. South Shore Clean Cities works with and guides more than 176 municipal, county, and school as well as university member fleets to help mitigate barriers that are preventing them from adopting alternative fuels and advanced technology vehicles, while also creating policies that support petroleum and vehicle emission reductions. On the slide, you can see a list of the items that South Shore Clean Cities provides in guiding these fleets and taking that next step to becoming more sustainable, including some educational training sessions. But the most important, I would say, or one of the most beneficial aspects of the program is the Greenfleet Audit. Our team works with the member fleet, to gather data on vehicle and fuel use, vehicle replacement schedules, and other details, and then we compile a fleet audit that's personalized for the individual fleet we're working with. And that recommendation, or that report rather, includes recommendations to help increase sustainability, reduce emissions, increase the fleet's bottom line. We meet with the fleet manager to go over these recommendations once that report's complete. What's great about this audit is it also helps the fleet to become grant ready, which helps us to better assist them when grant funding opportunities arise. What you'll find is many of the same types of information that we gather for the audit are also needed for grant applications for vehicle and equipment replacements. So when those grants become available, much of that work is already done. You can see here how these fleet audits helped our Green Fleet members in the MACOG region to become grant ready. In 2020 alone, South Shore Clean Cities assisted MACOG Green Fleet members in securing a total of $2.3 million in grant funding. And you'll notice several of those projects listed here, including CNG plow and dump trucks for the city of South Bend, clean diesel school buses for Penn Harris Madison School Corporation, some CNG, that's compressed natural gas, ready mix truck repowers for Ozinga, CNG transit buses for South Bend Transpo, propane school buses for Wanee Community School Corporation. You're going to hear from them later. Also level 2 charging, that's electric vehicle charging stations, which are going to be installed later this year in and around the MACOG region. So just a host of items that were made possible because we were able to have these kinds of fleet audits through the Green Fleet program. There is funding currently available, and we're already working with our Green Fleet members on applications. I know our friend Shawn is going to be sharing some more information about this in his presentation later this afternoon. You can clearly see the successes that South Shore Clean Cities has had in working with MACOG through the Green Fleet program to assist these fleets with decarbonization and with resiliency. And we'd love to help you and your fleet achieve similar success. So please contact our office anytime. We'd be more than happy to discuss with you getting involved with the Green Fleet program. And we look forward to continuing the conversation and working with you. Thank you again, and thanks for having us, Leah.
Great, thanks so much, Lauri. The Green Fleet program is such a key part of our clean air program, especially with respect to clean transportation initiatives. So thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. South Shore Clean Cities is now going to be rebranded as just Clean Cities.
Our name change is pending legal at this point because we are a 501c3, so we need to reincorporate ourselves. So the name of the organization is pending, and we will be announcing that when that comes through. So thank you for asking, Kelly. Appreciate that.
Great. All right. So now moving into our keynote presentation for today, our speaker is Shawn Seals, and as always, we are grateful to Shawn for being with us to share today, again, a regional air quality update and an update on Indiana's Volkswagen funding. Now we are several years at least into the implementation of that, so some exciting successes to share with us today. Shawn, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Obviously, here's who I am and what we're here to talk about today. I wear a lot of hats at IDEM as a senior environmental manager, but the two hats we're going to talk about a little bit today are those related to air quality in the area, as well as the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Program. So a quick summary of the presentation today, and some of these slides we're going to go through relatively quickly because for St. Joe and Elkhart County, a lot of what is contained in this slide is just good news and not stuff that we need to spend a lot of time on necessarily. So some of these slides will go a little bit quicker than others, but we're just going to touch on the geographic area, the air quality trends, that being at the monitor sites, as well as the emission trends, that being, the actual emissions in the area. We'll touch a little bit on the schedule for ambient air quality standards review. Not a whole lot new or exciting there. We'll also touch on the 8-hour ozone area designations, and then we'll kind of close up with the VW program. So let's touch real quick on geographic area. We're here to talk about North Central Indiana. And North Central Indiana, as you can see, for our purposes from a planning standpoint and SIP development and such, is basically St. Joe and Elkhart County. And what you'll see here is we do currently operate and maintain 3 monitor sites in St. Joe County and 2 in Elkhart. In St. Joe County, we have all 3 of our sites in St. Joseph do measure ozone, and 1 of those sites measures PM. And then in Elkhart, we have 1 that measures for both ozone and 1 that measures PM as well. So let's talk a little bit about air quality trends at these monitor sites. So fine particulate matter, also known as PM 2.5, is one of those pollutants that actually has a daily and an annual standard. So this slide kind of gives you a little bit of a picture of the daily standard for PM 2.5. And you'll see that the daily standard is still set at that level that was set in 2006 at 35 micrograms per cubic meter. And, you know, they do revisit these from time to time to make sure that they're still consistent with protecting human health. And as they've revisited these, they have found that that daily standard is still reasonable at 35. So it has maintained that level for a while. As I noted, we've got 2 sites here that in the North Central region, 1 in each county, that do measure for PM 2.5. And you'll see with a daily standard of 35, both of these sites are operating significantly below the standard. And then, as I said, we also have an annual standard for fine particulate matter, or PM 2.5. Now, this one you will see, if you'll notice that there are 2 red lines representing the standards for the annual. In 97, it was originally set at about 15 micrograms per cubic meter, and then it was revisited in 2012, and that standard was tightened up a little bit down to 12 micrograms per cubic meter. You do see the emission trends at those monitor locations from 2011 up through what we have currently for the counties, and you'll also see that just like we saw in that daily standard, the sites are continuing to monitor at or below the standard, pretty comfortably at or below the standard, actually. And then, you know, this is just kind of a nice snapshot of the state as a whole as it relates to PM 2.5 design values and the annual design values. And that's basically that 3-year average of the 98th percentile of the standard or of the measurements at those sites. And once again, when you look at this, you'll see with the standard set at 12 micrograms per cubic meter, obviously at 8.9 and 8.4 up here in North Central Indiana, we're in a pretty comfortable place. And if you look around the state, realistically at the standard of 12, we've only got a couple few sites that are starting to inch close to that standard. So overall, we feel pretty good about where air quality is as it relates to PM 2.5 across the state. Now let's shift gears and talk a little bit about ozone. Ozone, what you see in this slide, we have had a revisit to the ozone standard as well in 2008. That 8-hour ozone standard was set at 75 parts per million, well, 75 parts per billion, or 0.75 parts per million. And you'll see those represented by the 2 different sort of graphics above. The 75 that ran from basically 11 to 14. And then it was tightened up a little bit in 2015. And you'll see that that is represented by the red line with the triangles on it. Now, in this case, once that standard was tightened down to 70, here in North Central Indiana, when we look at the maximum 8-hour values, we did see some areas that did pop above that standard from time to time. But one thing to keep in mind is that ozone, when we're talking about the conversation of designations, of attainment, non-attainment, whatever it might be, we need to keep in mind that the design value is the 3-year average of the fourth high daily max for that 8-hour period. And that will be represented in the next slide. So here you see, same thing, you see those same graphics representing the 08 and 15 8-hour standards of 75 and 70. But you'll also see in this case, we did see a little bit of a bounce at the St. Joe Shields site for the design value for the years 16 through 18. It did rise a little above the standard at that point in time. But when we look at where we are today, you know, using our 18 to 20 values, the design value of that is basically that 3-year average of that fourth high. All of the north central sites for ozone are currently under the standard, and actually kind of, you know, they're dropping even farther below the standard. There's a bit of a trend downward, which is of course what we all like to see. Just like the previous map slide, this represents all of the monitor sites that we have across the state. Blue is represented for everything that is measuring at or below the standard. So blue is good, purple is not as good. So you do see that we do have a couple locations here in Northwest Indiana that we are struggling with a little bit as it relates to the 8-hour design value for 18 through 20 at that 70 parts per billion standard. Now let's talk a little bit about the long-term emission trends. Now in this case, what we're talking about are not the actual monitor sites that you saw in the previous slides. So what we're actually talking about here are the actual emissions that we are seeing. So this is not a measurement per se of a monitor value. This is actually data from US EPA's NEI database that includes all of the various types of emissions, whether it's point emissions from our industries, whether it's area emissions from, you know, just local activities. It includes the mobile sources, it includes non-road sources. So this is kind of the all-in snapshot. And what we do see here is, generally speaking, you know, we had this really odd scenario, and we talk about this one. We actually talked about this one last week in our office, that significant drop in 2008. And as many probably recall, you know, there was an economic recession in 2008, and it did have a really notable impact on people's ability to do the work that they were doing. I guess I would say it had a direct impact on the emissions that we were seeing in NEI for that particular year. So it's not that we want to say that that's, you know, an oddity, but if we kind of just sort of, I guess I would say, smooth out this trend line, you would see that once again, VOCs in the area, NOx in the area, and PM 2.5 in the area, even though they had that little dip in 2008 and have been on the rise since then, they are bending back down here recently, and overall the trend continues to be downward. So let's talk a little bit about the schedule for ongoing National Ambient Air Quality Standards, the review. And these next few slides will be the ones that I was mentioning. We'll probably go through relatively quick, because since the St. Joe Elkhart area really is not currently dealing with any non-attainment issues for any of the criteria pollutants, most of this is just informative, but not necessarily specific, or maybe not that relevant to you all specifically. So I think the key thing there on this slide to just kind of note is the last review completed dates and the final rule signed dates. That sort of second row across there. I talked earlier about the fact that EPA does revisit all of these pollutants on a regular basis. And this gives you some indication of kind of when it was that these were last reviewed and when the final rule for those was last signed. And in particular, you know, we typically look at ozone, and we particularly look at PM 2.5. And when you look at these two in this table, you'll see that it was December of last year that these were last revisited. So we're pretty current on those. This is also a slide with a whole lot of information that's really not overly relevant to North Central Indiana, thankfully for you all. And it just kind of walks you through the different timelines of what has to happen when an area is designated as non-attainment. Since we don't have that currently in North Central Indiana, much of this isn't necessarily worth talking about at this point, but we always include this if for no other reason, just so that folks know if we were in a scenario where maybe we were getting close to it, so we can start thinking about what the steps are going to be. So, you know, there's going to be the ambient air quality standard date that it goes final, then there's going to be a designation date, and then IDEM has to turn in an infrastructure SIP and the attainment plans. And so it just kind of gives you sort of a timeline of what that would look like if we were actually required to do that currently, which we aren't at this point. So we're good there. Next slide. And so we talk a little bit, and once again, we're going to kind of roll through these, the 8-hour ozone area designations, talking a little bit about sort of the history, I guess is what this one really is. So it was 2015, October of, that EPA promulgated a rule that revised and strengthened the 8-hour ozone standard down to that 0.070 parts per million, and we saw in our previous slides. And EPA intended to promulgate the final decision, or the designations, for all of the areas of the country under that standard no later than October 2017. But as is often the case, federal actions, court judgments and such did create some delays. So in the end, they ended up doing it in 2 rounds, the designations. In November of 2017, they did designate 74 of Indiana's 92 counties as attainment or unclassifiable in that first round of air quality designations under the NAAQS. And then later in April of 2018, they designated the remaining counties in Indiana, and it's Clark and Floyd counties were designated as a part of the Louisville, Kentucky area. Let's see, I'm trying to kind of go through these. Calumet, Hobart, North, Ross, and St. John townships in Lake County were designated as a part of the Chicago, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin marginal non-attainment area. And when designations happen at a township level, it does get a little bit tricky for IDEM when it comes to handling the data to demonstrate that an area is on track to meet the standard. So we always have to work closely with EPA on that one. And as it says, the remaining areas of the state were designated as attainment or unclassifiable. Those designations were effective in August of 2018. And then in July of last year, the Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit did order EPA to review the ozone standard designations in several states, including Porter County, Indiana. And now let's talk a little bit about the Indiana Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Program. So I thought it would be kind of handy for folks most folks have a pretty good feel by now. You know, we've just begun round 3. We have 2 rounds under our belt. I figure most people have a pretty good feel for what the program is, what it includes and such. So I thought it might be handy to give just a brief program to date update, if you will. So in rounds 1 and 2 of the on-road and non-road program, which is the one that the RFP is currently open for, as well as the Diesel-Wise Indiana with Volkswagen DERA option program, which is the one that comes out in the fall of each year, and there will be another one coming out in the fall of this year. We awarded roughly $16.4 million so far, and if you'll recall, we had about $41 million roughly available or made available to us through the Volkswagen consent decree. So 16.4 so far has actually been awarded in the first 2 rounds. And that has improved nearly 400 vehicles or pieces of equipment across the state. And that's pretty exciting for us, and a variety of really interesting projects. Been very fortunate to work with a lot of organizations, entities, communities, school systems here in North Central Indiana. We're going to be hearing from Amy here shortly about some of the things we've been able to work with them on, and we're excited to be a part of their program moving forward as well. And then we also, last year, as many might know, we did roll out the Indiana statewide EV charging network program. This was also a part of the Volkswagen consent decree, and here we had about $6.14 million available that we could use for EV infrastructure. And ultimately, we decided to set aside about 10% of that for level 2 charging, and about 90% of that was designated for DC fast charging installations. So in response to our RFP, we did receive 45 applications for 287 charging stations combined for level 2 and DC fast installations. And it was really exciting that those installations actually were in 93 different Indiana cities and towns. So it really was a good quality statewide rollout. So we're excited about that. Late last year, when we took recommendations to the Volkswagen committee, they did approve 35 awards for level 2 charging stations in 57 locations across the state. And several of those are going to be right here in your backyard in the coming months or years. And then, as many may know, we did have a good number of DC fast applicants, and we had 4 of them that looked like they were really strong, viable statewide programs. So we did ask for some clarification from each of those 4 programs, and we're in the process of reviewing those now and intend to take a recommendation to the Volkswagen committee at our next meeting. So let's talk a little bit about the program, round 3 on-road and non-road program that's on the street right now. Now you'll see first bullet says 12 million available for projects this round. If you'll recall, it's usually about $9.8 million that's available for the program. In the first couple rounds, we've had some scenarios where some projects didn't complete and we ended up with some returned funds there. So we just decided that, you know what, this seems like a good time and a good space to go ahead and bump that 9.8 up to 12. So the minimum allocations, if you will, that we're expecting are going to be about 4.26 for class 4 through 8 on-road vehicles. And you'll see that that does not include school buses. And it doesn't include school buses because they have their own 2 categories here. $1.99 million for non-electric powered school buses. And we'll talk a little bit about what that's going to look like in round 3 in the coming slide. At least $850,000 for electric powered school buses is the plan. 2.73 million for non-road equipment and vehicles. And we're hoping to have some really exciting projects up in the area again this year. And then that remaining balance, that 2.17 million roughly, IDEM is going to use those as discretionary projects, and those funds will be sort of broken down based on the categories that you see above. Just like before, a minimum single grant award, we're expecting that to be somewhere in the range of maybe $50,000 with a maximum of about 2 million. Applications are due June 1st, and the projects are expected to be completed by the end of 2022. So just to make clear what vehicles, engines, and equipment are eligible under the program this year, pretty consistent with the years past, class 4 through 8 medium duty or heavy duty trucks, class 4 through 8 buses, pre-tier 3 ferry and tugboat marine engines, pre-tier 4 freight switcher locomotives, pre-tier 3 airport ground support equipment, and over 8,000 pound lift capacity forklifts and port cargo handling equipment. So I think some important things to point out about round 3, what I'm just calling our revisions and reminders. There are some subtle changes to round 3. Some of these occurred in round 2, but just wanted to be kind of explicit in clarifying these. And this one right here is the biggest change for round 3. And that is that no on-road diesel to diesel repower or replacement projects are going to be eligible in round 3. This was a determination that was made in the last meeting with the Volkswagen committee. It is actually pretty consistent with what we've been seeing from most of our awards. Most of the awards that we have been making have been moving from diesel to propane, moving from diesel to CNG, or maybe moving from diesel to all electric power. There were not that many diesel to diesel repower or replacement projects. So to make sure that we were getting the greatest emission reduction possible for the investments that we were making, in round 3, we opted to remove on-road diesel to diesel repower or replacements. I think the next bullet is a really important one to keep in mind as well. Even though this has been from the beginning, we have not seen leases or installment purchase programs as eligible for funding. We just want to make that clear once again. Any sort of a lease to own or a loan taken out for a vehicle, anything that basically puts it on an installment plan, doesn't put us in a place where we can actually submit to the Volkswagen trustee a viable reimbursement request for the total cost of your project. So to be clear, the vehicles, the equipment must be purchased fully and completely, and then we're able to reimburse. Anything on an installment plan is simply not going to work. Any third-party funds that are being used in the project must be in-house and fully dedicated. I know in the case of our municipalities, a lot of time maybe there are some federal funds that you have available. Those funds have to be in-house and they have to be dedicated to the project that you're applying for. I mean, it can't be, as the next bullet says, a contingent funding scenario where we're applying for funds from the Volkswagen program with the hope of matching those funds with this federal grant program. When you make that application, those funds need to be in-house and dedicated to the project. Otherwise, what we ultimately end up finding, and that's why a lot of these funds that have gone into round 3 from rounds 1 and 2 are there, is that projects did not complete because they had contingent funding with, say, federal highway, and they didn't get the federal highway grant, so they weren't able to complete the project. So now we have, $1 million, so to speak, sitting on the side that we're not able to put into good quality projects because they kind of got locked down by that contingent funding. In-kind matches are not considered towards the applicant's required match. This is a cash program, so just look at it that way. And to save my sanity a little bit, I really appreciate a hard limit on a 10-page narrative section. There are some applications that would push over 30 pages, and that gets a little bit trying. So you can tell your story in 10 pages. I am confident that you can. Here's the application prioritization and selection process graphic. I think everybody's kind of seen this. We posted this in March of this year. You're going to submit the applications based on what you see in the RFP. IDEM is going to get them. We're going to score them, prioritize them, make recommendations to the Volkswagen committee, who's then going to ultimately select and make final awards. And then we'll begin the funding agreement development. So this gives you a quick snapshot of sort of the timeline of some of the things happening here in the near future. As noted earlier, the proposal deadline is June 1st of this year. That gives you roughly 10 weeks to put those things together from the day that it went live. We're hoping towards the end of June to be able to review, prioritize, and select the projects for award. Hoping to make those notifications sometime in July of this year, and about a month later in August, we would expect the funding agreements to be fully executed and the projects would be starting to be implemented. And then again, the projects must be completed by December 31st, 2022. That gives you a good 93 weeks to knock that out. And then just a reminder for those who might be looking at the DERA option of the Volkswagen program. At this point in time, we're still envisioning that to be focused on the non-road sector as it has been in the first couple years. So, if you're on the fence with a non-road project, the DERA option could be something to consider as well. And that's all I have for you today. Various resources here that you can get from the various links. Office of Air Quality, if you need a little bit more information about air quality, the standards and monitors and such. The Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Program has its own website. If you decide to submit applications for the Volkswagen program, they do need to be sent to the VW Trust at idem.in.gov email address. But if you have questions, all of my contact information is down there, and you're free to call me or email me. And since we're still in this remote work environment, email is going to probably be a little bit more efficient for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Leah, and we'll go where you want
Great.
to go.
But we have one question here, which is how the pandemic, or if the pandemic has affected some of the conclusions around ozone attainment, if those were, if we think those were substantive, that would mean that in future years we might again run up against some violations of monitors. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's really, I'd say it's actually maybe a little too early to fully predict what the impact of that might have been. Will there be an impact? Yeah, I mean, I think statistically we can all agree that there will be an impact, but will it be an impact large enough to necessarily create a scenario where people become a little too comfortable with where we are currently, so to speak? I don't know if that will necessarily be the case. I think one thing that is relevant, however, we looked at that one slide that had that curious dip, if you will, in 2008 on the emissions. If we're looking at low numbers here for the year 2020 due to the pandemic, you're also going to that year 2020 will be a part of the design value calculation moving forward. So that can play positively in the area too.
All right, so now we are moving on to our next guest speaker. Amy Rosa is the Director of Safety and Transportation with Wani Community Schools, and they were the 2020 award winner for Partners for Clean Air last year. Unfortunately, we didn't have a virtual or in-person event. So we are pleased to have her with us today to share about the implementation of this project. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Thank you, MACOG, and your partners that you have here. Honestly, some of the people you're seeing here, our story wouldn't be a story without those partners. So we're really thankful for everyone you're seeing here in this initiative for cleaner air. So the Wani story is really pretty simple. We have zero regrets about moving in this direction. And by the year 2023, about 60% of our fleet will be powered by propane, a greener option. And we are very excited to announce that we have no regrets in that. And it's only because of the partnerships and how we were able to work through this start to finish, or at least to this point, little by little, as we worked through some hurdles, some education that we had to do with drivers or school board members, or the purchasing agent here at Wani, and then the partnership that we had to work through those hurdles and then bring on the things that we needed to bring on, like the new fuel provider, the extra work that we had to do a little bit with training, whether it was with drivers, sometimes with parents, and even with mechanics. But again, the partnership, the only word I can come up with often is seamless. And from start to finish, we've seen a very seamless transition. We're seeing lots of money savings. That's always a good thing. Definitely cost per gallon savings, significant savings in our service. Every time we service the bus, we're saving around $225 over that diesel product. We are very happy to say that we partnered with a fuel provider that set the infrastructure for us. There's lots of great propane providers. We went with one who set a tank for us. We ran the electric and the internet, and then we were up and running. They did training for us. We have the Bluebird product on board, and they did a lot of training for us with our drivers on site, and also with some really great recorded trainings that we could share with new drivers as they come on board. We were able to look at savings also in just overall fuel, like we mentioned, maintenance. And then of course the VW money was excellent. Just from the starting point, we were saving money in the purchase of the a little bit more expensive engine, but VW money made us definitely profit from the savings. And overall, we're seeing a propane savings across the board. And drivers, only comment from drivers that I hear all the time is that they're much quieter engines. So obviously our drivers are driving children. So in some cases they're hearing a lot more than they ever wanted to hear, but it's definitely an increase in not only safety here, but also on the bottom line when it comes to money. we didn't sacrifice anything with safety. In fact, we have an increased amount of safety by running this propane option in the school bus industry. So definitely to anyone looking into any one of these categories or tiers to move to a greener fleet, with the support we have in this area, which I'm not sure if other regions experience this, or we're just extra blessed to have MACOG and Clean Cities on board. It's just really made my job easy, and the decision to move towards this greener option really simple. And again, following up with no regrets.
Great. So I'm going to open it up to questions for Amy, and feel free either to unmute yourself and ask your question or put it in the chat. But I'm going to start it off with one question, which is back to the buses and preparing for them. Did you have to make any modifications to where the buses are stored, safety wise, or to meet other regulations?
No, actually, we are more flexible with this product because we do not have to plug in. So we do not need an electric source to keep the fuel or that fuel warm. Our buses now are parked all winter long out in locations that don't have that option. And so we're more flexible with parking, and we saw 0 cold weather issues in the last 2 winters.
Great. Another question here, back on the fueling infrastructure. So you mentioned you just ran the electric and internet. But it sounds like you didn't have upfront cost. How did that work with the vendor? And I know that's always a concern with moving to alternative fuels, is also the upfront cost of infrastructure.
Yeah, I worked with several vendors to look at their options. Some would provide some upfront cash. Others would set the product or the infrastructure. And in the end, we just looked at a 10-year overall cost plan, and looking at who needed a contract, who didn't. What kind of fuel costs we would be looking at, whether we would benefit from the government reimbursement per gallon, or they would take that. And in the end, we went with a company that has been very successful for us as far as even maintenance of that facility. We get an automatic notification when the fuel tank is low, and then they automatically also get that, fill it up, and then we get a notification when it's full. So so far, so good.
Great. Another question here. What were some of the questions that parents or drivers had that their perception may have been different than the reality, and how did you educate them on some of those concerns?
Right. We had probably the most common question was, is it going to blow up like I see on movies? You know, if that tank gets shot, or if the bus is in an accident, is it going to respond the way you see often in Hollywood? And so with the partnership, again, of some really good YouTube videos that are out there in the world about propane and that education, and then also the manufacturer of the bus helped us out, showing us the automatic shutoff valves, how the tank is protected. In the end, we had comments that, oh, this is actually probably a safer option than some of the other fuels we've seen. So
great. Well, thank you so much for telling your story and for being with us today. This is definitely a very exciting success story for the Green Fleet program in our region, and it's just been excited to see it grow from a handful of buses to over half your fleet in the next couple of years. So congratulations on this really exciting project. Now it's time to move into announcing our 2021 Partners for Clean Air Award winners. Every year, MACOG takes time to recognize businesses, individuals, and organizations in our region that have gone above and beyond to improve air quality in our region. We have 4 award winners that we are pleased to recognize this year. Our first awardee and recipient of our Partners for Clean Air recognition is John Glenn School Corporation for energy efficiency and clean energy leadership for their energy savings project that was implemented recently at North Liberty Elementary School, which is in St. Joseph County. Today we have with us representatives from John Glenn School Corporation and North Liberty Elementary School who will share about their project.
Hello, I'm Chris Winchell, Superintendent of John Glenn Schools. I also have with me Randy Romer, Principal of North Liberty Elementary School. Thank you so much for having us here today. We are really excited and humbled by the recognition we're receiving from your organization. I'd like to start off by just noting John Glenn's commitment to protecting student programs and expanding our student programming. And to do that sort of endeavor, a school must have a sound fiscal plan. And to have a sound fiscal plan, a school must also have a strong long-term facilities plan. As we reviewed our corporation-wide facilities plan, it became apparent to us that we could save utility expenses immediately on the North Liberty campus with the installation of a solar field project. We purposefully designed the project in a way that would accommodate the energy upgrades we had planned for the building. So this particular solar field consists of 146 solar panels, which will produce 338 kilowatts of energy over the course of the year. With the updated LED lights, system controls, and HVAC high efficiency renovation, we expect to reduce energy consumption by 90% at this campus, which is a total of approximately $80,000 per year. Once the solar field is paid off in about 9 years, that $80,000 savings will be moved from utility expenses to student programming.
And Mr. Winchell spoke in air. The field that you see there is 846 solar panels, as it says on the slide, and not the 146. So this solar field is directly east of our school grounds, which displays the solar field in close proximity to our student playground. Now, don't panic and think we made a poor choice in the location. That baseball field is not functional. This location also allows a visual appeal. A visual appeal for the community with a walking trail that ties into the track. The solar field expansion has allowed our curriculum to come to life with a vision to increase hands-on agri-solar science opportunities, which tie into many career paths associated with electricity.
The last thing I would like to note is that John Glenn School Corporation has a very strong tradition of agri-science education. We have many graduates who serve in the field in many different ways today. An additional goal of our green energy project is to develop an agri-solar science education program where students will have hands-on project-based learning opportunities that deal with renewable energy, solar energy, and how those things collide in the field of agri-science. It's our goal to eventually develop a K-12 agri-solar science education program. In the 2021 school year, we'll begin with a 4th through 6th grade high ability curriculum, as well as additional courses at the high school level that specifically work with green and solar energies.
So what you see here is a kiosk display displaying solar energy output as the panels are converting sunlight to electrical energy. In addition to decreasing power usage, one little part there, from the installation of our presented energy upgrades. And from an elementary standpoint, the top row comparison allows people just to notice that energy savings taking place. It's more than just reducing cost. A very simple presentation, but honestly, a very powerful product that we initiated here at North Liberty. We appreciate the recognition for this initiative and how it aligns with your vision, with MACOG's vision and mission, and celebrating these accomplishments with us. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon to celebrate the recent completion of this project. And it is worth noting that A number of years ago, a decade ago, there were no large solar projects completed by public K-12 school corporations in our region. And now John Glenn is joining a growing list of those school corporations. Collectively, I've counted at least 18 large solar projects in our region in the last several years. So just to read the list here, that includes Argus Community Schools, Bago Community Schools, which is under construction, Goshen Community Schools, Tippecanoe Valley Schools, Wawasee Community School Corporation, and Warsaw Community Schools. So collectively, this is now enough to power over 1,000 households annually based on the typical Hoosier household usage of electricity. And these projects are each big enough to power dozens to hundreds of homes. That's their equivalent size, where a decade ago when solar was more expensive, we would just see a few panels, a demonstration project, a science project, but not on the scale of really significantly cutting back on energy use within school buildings. So this is just really exciting to follow this trend over the last several years. Next is the city of Goshen. And Goshen is being recognized for leadership in clean transportation as well as overall environmental resilience. So today we have with us Aaron Sawatsky Kingsley, which is who is with the newest city department, the Department of Environmental Resilience, to share more about what the city has achieved and what is planned for the future. So Aaron, now I will turn it over to you and advance your slides.
All right. Thank you so much, Leah. And thank you so much to MACOG for this recognition. We're really, really pleased to receive this award and to be a part of the larger community which MACOG represents, and the great work that continues to go on. Yeah, so thank you very much to MACOG for this recognition. So I just want to start by saying that the efforts that we are making here in Goshen are more than just for clean air, although that is clearly an important part of what we're interested in. We are wanting to work holistically towards the health of our entire ecosystem. And that involves efforts from all of our departments. So here we have some images of different things that are happening around the city. So our wastewater treatment and utilities departments are involved in efforts. Our engineering department and street department are involved in other efforts, evidenced by our Main Street redesign through downtown, which is really designed to help that space become much more pedestrian friendly, much more multimodal friendly. And then we've got our tree planting picture here, which references our canopy goal, our urban tree canopy goal, which is intended to double our urban forest canopy coverage by 2045. So these are all different efforts that are coming out of the various departments across the city to help us move towards an ever more environmentally friendly kind of city. So this just gives a little bit of the background of the recent history that we've been working with. Back in 2019, you can see that the mayor created an environmental advisory committee to help think more carefully about some of the issues in front of us. And that was preceded earlier in the year by a resolution which students from the high school and some from the college brought to our city council, asking for the creation of a climate action plan, asking for the city to work towards net zero emissions by 2035, among some other things. So then following that, the passage of that resolution, which passed through our city council 6-0, we created a department of environmental resilience. The mayor asked me to step into the role as the director of that, and I've been working at that. It's been a lot of learning and a lot of excitement right along the way. And then last year, we began working on our climate action plan, and that was preceded by a couple years of doing some greenhouse gas emissions inventorying for the city for the first time. So we're doing a lot of data gathering, and we've been partnering with a cohort of other communities, municipalities around the state working on the climate action plan, and we hope to bring that to completion here in the next month or so. So we're really excited about that. It'll be a local government operations climate action plan. So we've been working at gearing up for the creation of electrical vehicle infrastructure, and at the end of 2019, we installed our first public charging station just outside of the mayor's office at City Hall, and purchased our first fully electric vehicle, a Tesla 3 there. We opted for the cheapest one that we could come up with. But that is a pool car, so it's available to all of us in the city, as long as we're not, loading mulch into the back of it, or trying to pull around one of the asphalt spreaders or something like that. So it's being used in different ways throughout the weeks, throughout the months, and we're pleased to be able to have that. We've also purchased a couple hybrid vehicles for the police department, and are continuing to experiment with how well that works, hoping to expand some of that capacity as well. We have been taking advantage of the VEW grant too, also, and very grateful to MACOG's leadership in this grant opportunity, along with various other municipalities in the region. And so, in addition to the existing one, which you can see here on the slide in green, we have two others that are planned to come online here in the next year or so. The one to the west there is the one which the city of Goshen is installing. The one to the south at Goshen Public Library, the public library has been partnering with all of us as well in order to get that station installed. So this begins to create some really good options in and around the downtown area of Goshen for EV charging. People coming through town on their way somewhere else, or stopping through to visit. We feel like this begins to set us up in some really nice ways. Why don't you advance it, please? We've continued to work at creating our bike and pedestrian systems throughout town. We've got some great routes that are heading, that help us to move all the way through the outskirts of town, and now we're continuing to concentrate on how we connect some of those routes right through the center of town. So in red, you can see some of the existing bike paths, and the green route is one which is planned now for hopefully to be completed yet this year. That will connect kind of the central core of those systems, of those bike routes, and kind of complete some of the loops that we need to have completed. So this will allow, again, for multimodal kind of transportation, non-automated transportation, which is something that we clearly want to be encouraging in Goshen. So this is probably a graphic that others of you have seen too. This is NIPSCO's planned emissions reduction, especially as they go off, take their coal generators offline. And I use this slide just to talk a little bit about our own climate action plan, which will certainly take advantage of the way that NIPSCO is changing their electrical generating capacity. And so while that will help us to reduce our government emissions, we also recognize that we have a lot of work to do in-house to become more efficient, to think about the different things that we can do to further reduce our own emissions. We'll need to be looking at solar ourselves in an increased capacity, but we're also thinking about how we can move can move our fleet away from gasoline and diesel in different ways. Thinking about the way that our land management practices can become can be more thoughtful and more careful as well. Go ahead, Leah. And this slide here, just to help us remember that the work that we're doing for our environment, for our ecosystems, is directly to benefit the people that we live with. And that's something that we are working hard to embed within our own practices here in Goshen, recognizing that if these efforts don't serve everybody, then we are cutting all of ourselves short. And one of the important things that this slide brings to mind is work that Goshen is engaging again with MACOG to do a transit expansion study. We're hoping to further our public transportation access from 36% approximately to 65% of the population, and to reach close to 75% of the jobs that are available in Goshen. So this is an important way that we can serve the good of our people and also the good of our environment. Mayor Stutzman is really pleased to be a part of this work, and is also very grateful for this recognition. He is really pleased with the way that MACOG has continued to be a partner with us over the years. Thank you again from Goshen to MACOG and to Clean Cities, and it's really exciting to hear about all the other things that are happening in the region.
Great. Thank you so much, Aaron, for sharing that story. And it's been inspiring to see the continued steps. It's been, a long continuous process of improvement over the years. And also just to hear your long-term vision for the city for environmental resilience. All right. So our third Partners for Clean Air recipient this year is the University of Notre Dame, being recognized for significant investments and partnerships to advance clean energy in our region. And I will be playing a brief message from Paul Kemp, Assistant Vice President of Utilities and Maintenance with the university. And I believe Paul is also with us to answer questions.
Hello, I'm Paul Kemp, the Assistant Vice President for Utilities and Maintenance here at Notre Dame. I want to thank the Michiana Area Council of Government for providing us with this award as a clean air partner. This morning, I'm standing on a roof of Stenson Remick with one of our solar installations behind me. We have 3 such installations, one here, one by the South Bend Airport, and a great project at the St. Joseph Solar Farm out in St. Joe County, a partnership between ourselves and the Indiana Michigan Electric Power Company. Solar energy is just one aspect of how we achieve sustainability here at Notre Dame. I believe we're also being recognized for a hydro project that we're working on downtown. All these projects are a commitment by the university to reduce our carbon footprint, and as we continue to work towards our goal of eventually becoming carbon neutral. We're pleased to be a part of the solar array with IDEM, which is a 20 megawatt array. The university is going to be a 40% partner or off-taker of the carbon credits from that project, which equates to about 20% of the electrical energy that we use here on campus. Our hydroelectric project will produce about 7% of the electricity we use in total on campus. These 2 projects in total will produce roughly 15 to 20% of renewable energy for our campus. They'll also reduce our carbon emissions by well over 20,000 tons per year. These projects, along with other sustainable initiatives on our part, including our elimination of coal combustion at our power plant, higher efficiency combustion gas turbines, and the fact that we operate a combined heat power system, all contribute to our reductions in carbon. We have some intermediate goals to reduce our carbon emissions by 50% by 2030 and by 83% by 2050. That said, we are currently working on reevaluating those goals, as we've already achieved our 2030 goal and are looking to be more aggressive in the future. Once again, I'd like to thank the Michiana Area Council of Governments for this award. This is certainly an area in which the university will continue to work, and we look forward to our other partners in the community contributing to the reduction of carbon in our community for a cleaner and safer environment for future generations.
Moving on to our next Partners for Clean Air recipient. This is Recycling Works, Inc. And they are being recognized for leadership in recycling and education throughout our region. Despite changes in the recycling market overall that have led to some challenges that they've been addressing through partnerships and education. So I am going to turn it over to Logan Miller with Board and Waste Away to talk about your project.
Hello, this is Logan here, and I am very grateful on behalf of Recycling Works and the entire Waste Away group. We are very grateful for this moment of recognition. There's been a lot of work that has gone into these improvements and diversion efforts. There's a wide range that we're dealing with here, but I thought it would be a great opportunity to address, to take this valuable time to talk about why do we recycle and why is it important to recycle. So we all know at Recycling Works, or we might not all know, but at Recycling Works, we accept single stream material from the communities out in our region, about a 100-mile radius. We sort the material, we bale it, and we ship it. We ship the commodities to end users that create new packaging and products. You can advance to the next slide, please. So here we want to talk about the main benefits. So number one, we're talking about recycling conserves natural resources. So by shipping scrap material, the bales that we're recycling, to manufacturers or processing plants, instead of having them use natural resources such as trees, metal ores, minerals, oils, and other virgin materials, recycling itself reduces the pressure to further expand forestry, logging, and mining production. So that's really the basis of conserving natural resources in terms of waste. Next, we have recycling saves energy. So it usually takes less energy to supply materials to manufacturing industries than to supply virgin materials to those industries. So the main difference there, we're collecting that waste, we're processing it and transporting it for its next life. Whereas in the latter, you have virgin materials that are extracted, they're refined, they're transported, and then processed for manufacturing. So we're skipping a couple steps there, and that's the basis of saving energy. And piggybacking off of saving energy, in turn you're reducing your greenhouse gas emissions. So basically reducing the amount of energy that is used by the industry. Recycling is reducing your greenhouse gas emissions and helps stem the dangers and of global climate change. So just for example, I was reading that a load of glass can be trucked across the country 2.5 times before it generates the same greenhouse gas emissions as the primary manufacturing. Another one is aluminum. They say a truckload of aluminum could almost go to the moon and back before it emits as much greenhouse gas emissions as manufacturing aluminum from bauxite, which is where aluminum comes from. So that skipping that extraction step is huge. And so then it leads me to, we're contributing to the local economy. So for roughly every 100 tons that is recycled, it contributes to roughly 1 job. So the recycling industry creates a lot of jobs. The collection of the waste, the processing and sorting, the shipping, the mills that they're at, the reprocessing, and the manufacturing of new goods is all huge job creation. And so just the material that we process at Recycling Works helps contribute to over 600 jobs. So people don't usually think about how much is tied to the recycling industry. And another line is like for every landfill job, there's about 17 recycling jobs. And then lastly, what I feel is the most important is recycling is a quality of life concern. We're all here for a reason. We want clean air, we want clean water, we want clean soil and land. We want to live in areas that actively participate in waste reduction and waste diversion efforts, because people want to be conscious consumers. They don't want to live in a wasteful area. They want to make a difference. And when you surround yourself with others that are working towards that similar goal of being conscious consumers, it only strengthens the community. So I've been thinking a lot about that one, and I've in the recent week I've spent a lot of time thinking about the quality of life, and how is recycling related to that. So kind of putting a finger on that. And so, really all of this sums down to simply choosing not to address or reduce the massive amount of waste we contribute to, sends the messaging to our community and people looking to move to another community that we simply don't care about any of these above factors. So I thought that this would be a good platform to kind of share those core reasons and the benefits of recycling, because I know you guys are all advocates, and these are the real reasons of why we are recycling. And there on the right, we have a photo of our latest campaign for always recycle these items and never recycle these items. That will be a reoccurring, people will see that. Please move to the next slide. So this leads me to our discussion about our diversion efforts, and which is greatly enhanced by Brightmark. The concept of pyrolysis is something Mike Dungan and the Himes family have been talking about for 10 to 15 years. That they brought a trailer to our facility and they wanted to show us this new technology that they were working on, and for proof of concept. And now we're able to see the idea come to life. So for us, Brightmark has allowed us to find a home for many of the hard to recycle items that end up here. We don't necessarily want those items here, but they end up at our facility regardless. So this is your rigid plastics, big buckets, those hard to recycle films. We don't encourage people to bring that to us, but we now have the ability to divert that. And before, this material was going to our residue or our trash that leaves our facility. So we've experienced a great reduction in residue. We've increased our diversion. We're further contributing to our local economy, and we're kind of part of a new market. I'm able to help customers such as Notre Dame that say, hey, this is a really hard to recycle this or that. Can we do it? And I can make sure I get that truckload and make sure it goes directly where it needs to go. And so we can bail it and get that to Brightmark. So that leads me to my next slide. And this is our education campaign. We got a grant for education. So in St. Joe County, which is where we're doing this, we will be putting feet on the street, and we will be tagging carts, which is an education campaign to correct improper recycling habits. So we're really trying to get people to not bag their recycling. We're trying to not see grocery bags. We don't want to see food scraps. We don't want to see clothing, no tangling cords such as Christmas lights or electrical cords or hoses. And then big bulky items such as propane tanks and wood. So we're looking for the big ones we don't want. And we'll have feet on the street, like I said, tagging those cards to let the customer know, hey, this really, you're doing it a little bit incorrectly, and we want you to correct this. So that's what the OOPS tag is. And then our two goals are to increase participation and decrease contamination. So, in a lot of communities, such as St. Joe County, the participation rate is a little low. So we want to increase that participation, capture more of that recyclable material that has great value, and recover it and recycle it. And you could go to the next slide, please. So actually, could you go back? I'm sorry. That's my cart right there at my house. I thought I'd snag a picture of it. There are some things in there that I wouldn't necessarily recycle today, such as that green container clamshell. But the idea, you see this cart, so we open a lid and we want the material to be loose and dry. We're not, super nitty gritty about, is this recyclable? Are these people out on the streets are going to be looking, okay, this person is keeping it nice and the material's loose, it's dry. We don't see hoses, we don't see bags. So that's a cart that we give a thumbs up to. So I just wanted to mention that loose material is very important to us. You can go to the next slide. So then, lastly, this is very exciting to me. I've been spending a lot of time planning and working on an upgrade at our facility, which is called a retrofit. We received a grant to help kind of push us in the right direction of upgrading our facility, and we'll be increasing our capacity to recycle more product significantly, about an additional 60%. So this is huge. We're going to increase the technology at our plant, more screens to process more cardboard, more paper, more optical sorters to sort contaminants out of products. We will further enhance through technology and more machinery. So we want to become more efficient and process more material. And with all these improvements comes an increase in our quality. So that's huge for our end customers. We have to send this to a mill, and that mill needs to be happy with the product they're receiving. So making sure they get the product they ask for, it's with the right spec. So we're setting ourselves up to be a pretty sustainable endeavor. So we get the right technology, we'll have the quality we need. So if the markets go south, we're not sitting here with poor quality of product. So we're looking to be able to have outlets forever. And so we're looking to decrease contamination. Kind of in my closing, in the case that recycling is in the topic of your peer group, please remember to be an advocate and always get the basics right. That's our big message. The basics, of course, are your cardboard, your paper, newspaper, junk mail, cans, milk jugs, detergent bottles, pop bottles, water bottles, in the case you forgot your reusable one. Just be an advocate, because there's a lot of messaging out there that recycling's broken, it's down. It's not. You can tell we're putting in $3.5 million to make it so we can process more material than ever before. And we're all here for a reason, and it's for the greater good. So thank you again for the recognition, and thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Logan, and sharing that story. Now we have just a few minutes to wrap up today. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to MACOG and we can connect you with one of the award winners or other presenters to get your question answered. So we want to remind everyone that air quality action season is starting this weekend, May 1st, and it runs through September 30th. And this is when we're most likely to see air quality action days due to ozone. To assist you all in your education efforts, to your networks, we have created some flyers which are available for print or for digital dissemination on social media or email. And they're both to educate people on tips on what they can do, as well as to send out an alert on an air quality action day saying today or tomorrow, if you're a sensitive population, maybe if you're an athlete, you should know not to engage in strenuous activities outside to protect your health, as well as encouraging the general population to take action specifically on those days. So in the slides we send out with this presentation, there's a link to Google Drive where you will be able to download those different file formats here to assist in our education efforts throughout the season. I want to make you aware of a resource that I mentioned previously, which is our Clean Air Michiana website. And this just has some tips and ideas on what you can do to take action for our health and for clean air in our region. So visit that website to learn more. As well as the IDEM Smogwatch resource, which has been improved over the last couple of years. So check it out if you haven't recently. It provides a daily air quality forecast for ozone, particulate matter, as well as an option to sign up for those alerts whenever there's a forecast that the air will be unhealthy for sensitive groups. So there's the link again. You can get that as these as the recording is sent out and the slides are available, and make sure to sign up for those alerts so that you can be disseminating that to your networks. Want to make you aware of upcoming events that are related to clean transportation or sustainability in general that MACOG is involved in. Later this fall, we have the National Drive Electric Week, and we generally plan something to fall during that time period. So that's September 25 to October 3 is when that week falls this year, as well as the Sustainable Solutions Conference and Expo, which we are planning with partners South Shore Clean Cities and the City of South Bend. That will be on October 26th, and the link there will get you to the registration page. Once again, the slides will be available after this meeting, and I thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your day to learn about clean air and what you can do, and to celebrate each and every one of our award winners. We hope that you've learned something from one of them, one of the presenters today, that you can take back to your own organization and implement. Thank you all.